Because even the other thing I want to ask you is, what are the most missed healthy food intolerances? Because that's a whole nother thing that I think we're not aware of.
So the inflammatory core 4 that I mentioned, that's an obvious one, but I wouldn't even call those healthy foods, right? I mean, most of them are really processed, refined, boxed foods. But I would say the healthy food sensitivities or food intolerances, the food reactions, and this is really pertinent to most of the people that I talk to because they are eating better than most people, but they're still struggling. So the number one, and let me bring a caveat to all of these foods. It's not necessarily these foods' fault. The heart of what I do in functional medicine is bioindividuality. And even healthy foods, what works for one person may not be right for you. And I would say also what serves you today and what your body loves now, if we're actually fixing the problem of why you had the problem in the first case, then over time, you'll be able to do more things. So I'm going to say these foods with that preface of don't be fearful of these foods. Don't become orthorexic, which is a massive problem within wellness. That's orthorexia is sort of disordered eating around healthy foods. That is not what I'm trying to convey here. So that's important to know. But also, for the people that are struggling with these issues, it could be a massive game changer for them because they may be thinking, oh, I've been doing what I thought was healthy, but I was unintentionally sabotaging my health. So number one, people that have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that I mentioned, it's linked to things like anxiety and depression. It's linked with other autoimmune problems. It's also the leading cause of things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. It's linked to bloating, like uncomfortable bloating. People will tell me they feel like they're 9 months pregnant, even though they're not pregnant, as far as uncomfortable bloating and things like acid reflux and GERD. So there's a class of foods that are known as higher FODMAP foods. FODMAPs is an acronym that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, which is just a verbose way of saying fermentable sugars. So things like onions and garlic, really healthy foods, right? Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, really healthy foods, but they're all higher in these fermentable sugars. So people that are thinking they're doing the good things with SIBO,
I've done that for so long.
Right, they're loading
I've been one
up
of those
on
people.
onions and garlic, and they're getting so bloated. They're getting so much gastrointestinal upset. So look, is the problem the high FODMAPs?
No, I get it.
You have to heal the SIBO so you can bring those high FODMAPs in.
Yes.
So FODMAPs would be a lot for our people that are probably a lot of our listeners right now. It's just people that are very well read, but they're still struggling with these problems. They're eating healthier, but they're still struggling. So look at higher FODMAPs and potentially look at SIBO as the driver of that FODMAP intolerance. And then I'm mentioning a lot of people that have mold toxicity, mycotoxins is what they're called. Higher mold foods can perpetuate flare-ups too. So a lot of grains, even healthy grains like even gluten-free grains can be higher in mold. Coffee can be higher in mold. Wine, other alcohols can be higher in mold. And people that have a sensitized immune system should look, if they have a mold problem, look at foods that could potentially contain mold. And then another one that I see are higher histamines. Foods that are higher histamines or histamine liberators or histamine releasing foods can definitely be problematic for people that have SIBO, these gastrointestinal gut problems, and people that have, there's other symptoms of histamine intolerance like anxiety, because your gut and brain, this gut feelings connection again here. People that have lots of kombucha, people that have lots of bone broth, people that have lots of fermented pickled foods, even avocados can be higher in histamines. So these are the gray areas that we need to look at. Because
but that's why you need to diagnose yourself effectively, because
or if you're doing all the things and still struggling, these are the areas you need to look at to say, what are these check engine lights in my life? Why is my body reacting to kombucha? It's not kombucha's fault, but is it the body telling me that this is releasing histamines right now? And then I have to ask the question, why do I have histamine intolerance in the first place? Which unresolved trauma can be part of that. SIBO, mold toxins can be a part of that. Chronic Lyme, the psychological and the physiological. So this is what I see sadly play out in people's lives, but it's only sad until you find out and when you give them answers, then it's anything but sad. Because then it's this aha moment of like, wow, I can do something about it.
That's exactly how I feel. Like everything you've been talking about, I'm like, this is the journey I've been on, because it's that feeling of I feel healthy to that feeling of recognizing, wow, there's so much about health that I did not understand. then getting accurate tests that actually tell you what's going on. Because I think there's a lot of like, oh, you just need a bit of this or you need a bit of that. And that doesn't work. Like the accurate testing is such an important part of this because then the recommendations can be healthier.
Yeah.
I think a lot of recommendations are just based on basic symptoms and that doesn't necessarily always go the right way. Yeah. And then of course, consistency in the recommendation. That feels like the full journey.
Absolutely. And I think, look, if what you're doing is working for you and you feel great, don't look for problems where there isn't any.
Of course.
But I think we have an epidemic rise of people that are doing all the things, that are really compliant people, that are doing things their doctors are telling them to do, but they're still spinning their wheels. That's what I'm talking about here. We have to do better here. So I think that these are what I find clinically to be missing links for people. Then they fix a few things and it really kind of allows their body to take their health to the next level and start feeling the way they want to feel. And when you start repairing these things, whether it's repairing their gut health or regulating their nervous system or whatever we're talking about here, all of those foods I just mentioned, almost all of them can be reintroduced.
Yes.
So temporarily, maybe avoid them. But longer term, let's fix the problem that drove it in the first place.